Now then, Vinyl Monkey here. The morning after the night before, last night was Eurovision, and I was up late watching that, and I can't believe it really, how sad that is, because when I first became aware of Eurovision, it would have been, Eurovision's actually 2 years older than me, so I'm 65. It started a couple of years before I was born. I first became aware of it when we got a telly. We got a telly in about 1966, just before the World Cup. And I remember Eurovision and taking it so seriously and wondering why aren't the Beatles representing Britain, or the Rolling Stones or something like that? Why have we got whoever it was at that time? I think Matt Monro, who can sing actually, was 64, but who was it, 66? I can't remember, but anyway, and then in the early 70s we were at school and used to talk about it, and I used to think, why don't we just enter Led Zeppelin into it and have done with it, what the hell are we doing with the New Seekers or Cliff Richard or crap like that? But then obviously later on in the 70s I realised that the whole thing's just a real sort of charade anyway, so I never had anything to do with it right through until the last couple of years, where now I sit there on a Saturday night with my cans of beer lined up and my scoring sheets here with all the countries on, all 26 of them, and me giving them all scores and arguing when the public vote comes in and the judges' votes and all the rest of it, and talking about all the sort of geopolitical influences on it all and all the rest of it. It's really sad. I guess none of you good people who watch this channel will have watched it. You've all got better things to do on a Saturday night, but I was fuming actually, because my top two came nowhere. And I had at number 2, I had Belgium, who did a sort of soul type act, total rip-off it was, of pretty much a direct rip-off of some soul song, I can't remember which, but at least pleasant to listen to. And my winner was Croatia, sort of great mad band who allegedly an anti-war song, although I don't speak Croat or Serbo-Croat or whatever, so I can't verify that, but this was a band who stripped down and ended up in pairs of white Y-fronts, and I was so infuriated am I about the sham result where Sweden ended up winning, just banal rubbish. Finland came second. I think we can probably guess why they got a popular public vote. Israel were dreadful, they were third. It was just a typical shambles, but in protest at that, and in sort of solidarity with the Croats, who I thought should have won it, I was going to sit here in my pair of big white Y-fronts today and do this video, but I couldn't find any. I've only got sort of black boxes, so I've spared you that. Anyway, but that is Eurovision. Enough with that. We're on to drummers. We did lead guitarists, we've done bass guitarists. These are my top 10 drummers, or 10 drummers at least, that I like to listen to. And what do I know? Absolutely nothing, as I've explained before. I'm not a musician. I like what I listen to, but I know nothing about it really. And if you do want to watch someone who knows all about drumming, and particularly jazz drumming, prog rock drumming, then there's a guy called Andy Edwards, who is a proper high level drummer. He's played with Robert Plant and all sorts of other people. He's got a brilliant channel. Just look up Andy Edwards on YouTube. He does loads and loads of videos, but he's got his top drummers from all different types of music, and he is, as I said, a man who not only does brilliant videos but knows what he's talking about, unlike me. So, but anyway, I do like drummers. I love drummers. As a kid I used to, I remember seeing this guy Buddy Rich. This is Buddy Rich with Lewis Belson, and he used to do sort of drum battles, if you like, where there'd be two drummers sort of against each other, who can be the most powerful, and out-drum each other sort of thing to the death. And I used to love that sort of thing. And I love drum solos, you know. Many people sort of think, oh God, drum solo, it's time to go and make a cup of tea or go to the bar or whatever, but I love them, generally speaking. Yeah, absolutely love them. So, my top 10, without further ado. Number 10, one of the great jazz drummers, Anthony Williams, Tony Williams. He plays with Eric Dolphy on this album, Out to Lunch. Apologies for holding Out to Lunch up again. I think it's about at least a couple of times I've had this album up in the last, or in the recent past, and I don't do that just to upset Colin, who watches this channel occasionally. I know Colin's, he's now having to go through therapy and reckons he's been potentially permanently scarred by trying to listen to this album all the way through, but it's a brilliant avant-free jazz album, and Anthony Williams sort of really holds the thing together with that beat. He plays beautifully and subtly. Lovely player. My number 10, Anthony Williams. My number 9, another jazz drummer. This is Philly Joe Jones, who in this case is playing with Hank Mobley on Another Workout. It starts with a song called Out of Joe's Bag, which I think is a reference to Philly Joe Jones, and it sort of, Jones is prominent in it. I don't know a great deal about this guy. I know he played with one of the Miles Davis quintets. I just love the drumming on this album, you know, and it goes from sort of up front, as I say, on the first track, to much more subtle and in the background and in other tracks. And Miles Davis actually said that Philly Joe Jones was his favourite drummer, so that's some testimony. So Philly Joe Jones, my number 9. My number 8, Billy Cobham. This is the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Birds of Fire. Billy Cobham, he's just an aggressive, forthright, all speed and power, and you're blown away by the drumming on this album. It's absolutely bang, bang, bang. And I guess his style, which says all speed and power, it might be too much for some types of music, but this type of music, with all its sort of speed and virtuosity and drive and pace, it sort of fits beautifully, and he's just, yeah, some drummer, one of the greats. And he's said to have influenced many prog rock drummers thereafter. So I've got him as my number 8, Billy Cobham. My number 7 is a guy called Jack DeJohnette. He's played with everyone, as lots of these drummers are. A lot of the sort of jazz drummers that were in demand played with all sorts of players. But this guy's played with all sorts of types of jazz players as well, from sort of subtle jazz piano trios like with Keith Jarrett and Bill Evans, right through to sort of fusion, rock jazz fusion records like Bitches Brew with Miles Davis. And he's just a great all-round percussionist, not just a drummer, I think all-round percussionist. I didn't know much about Jack DeJohnette. This is a 1980s album, which has got it's got some 80s sort of production stuff in it, but it's really, really nice. And this is with his band Special Edition. Bitches Brew, don't need to say any more about that. Absolutely superb. And there was a couple of drummers played on this, but Johnette played most of the drums, I think, on this album. And I say I don't know a great deal about him, but I did look somewhat up where he described himself as an abstract drummer, someone who gets himself into an altered mental state as soon as he picks the sticks up. So anyway, I've got him down as my number 7. My number 6 is a guy I didn't think would be in this list, and he's not a guy whose solo stuff I can listen to really. But as a drummer, I think he was superb. And this is Phil Collins. I'm holding up Genesis, Selling England by the Pound. But could have held any of these up, or albums by his sort of jazz fusion band Brand X. So I did see him in the Marquee Club in the 70s actually. I seen Brand X, and his Collins drumming just unbelievable, absolutely fantastic. And he can do the whole lot from subtlety through to power and speed. listen to this. I was just listening through again today, and even on some of the sort of subtle songs, Firth of Fifth, for example, on this album, lovely drumming. Really, and despite the fact he's singing as well, which I reckon can't be easy. So, anyway, I've got Phil Collins as my number 6. My number 5 was a guy who played with Phil Collins both in Brand X and later on in Genesis when Collins took up the singing duties. He came in as sort of backup drummer and helped out on the tours, and I think 1 or 2 albums, live albums as well. But he started off in Yes. He played on Yes's first 5 albums, but then left Yes to join King Crimson. I'm holding up King Crimson's Red, and the drummer, of course, is Bill Bruford. Bruford, not sure how to pronounce it, but anyway, as I said, former member of Yes, and I think, well, listen, I've just been listening to this again today. I mean, if you listen to any of the Yes albums, the drumming is just really prominent, really up front and fundamental to the sound, and I think that's the thing. I've picked all of these, certainly the rock drummers, those where the drums seem just to really make the band and make that sound, and I think Bruford is one of them. With King Crimson, I think he was given more scope. He has a very sort of, seems like a spontaneous sort of style, and I think he had the freedom possibly in King Crimson to express that. But he's my number 5, Bill Bruford. My number 4 is the drummer with the Jimi Hendrix Experience. That's Mitch Mitchell. There he is next to Hendrix there. He apparently got the job in the Hendrix Experience on the toss of a coin. I think the auditions, they couldn't decide between Mitch Mitchell and Ainsley Dunbar, so they tossed a coin. He got the gig. I'm really glad he did, because I think his sort of fast driving jazz influence sound is really central to the whole Hendrix Experience sound, and I love the sound of this band. They only made 3 studio albums in their times. This is the first one you experienced, but I just think he provides a brilliant counterpoint to Hendrix's otherworldly guitar playing. Really good stuff. I'm not sure that he went on to do a great deal after Jimi Hendrix. I just don't know. I don't seem to have heard much of him, but somebody will know, maybe put it in the comments. But anyway, my number 4, Mitch Mitchell from the Jimi Hendrix Experience. My number 3 is the incomparable Ginger Baker. This is the Best of Cream album. Ginger Baker there in the middle, so-called his red hair obviously, but yeah, just an absolute, on the one hand, a wild extrovert style, all showmanship, but on the other hand, just sort of brilliant musician with his blend of jazz, rock, fusion, African styles. Really powerful, his double bass drum. He started off with a couple of the blues bands in the 60s, Blues Incorporated, 1 or 2 others, then formed Cream with Jack Bruce and Clapton. He played with Bruce previously. They had a sort of love-hate relationship, kept falling out. Then he was involved in Blind Faith, then went off to Africa and settled there, and was right into African music, played a lot with Fela Kuti over there. Just brilliant, as I say, incomparable. I mean, I suppose compared in terms of wildness and showmanship with Keith Moon, who I haven't got in this list, and that's partly because, yeah, I suppose it's partly because I don't tend to play the Who's records, and so I listened more of Ginger Baker, but I just think he's a superb musician, Baker, absolutely superb, mad as though he was. And if you want to know more about him, watch the brilliant documentary Beware of Mr. Baker, which came out, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so. Brilliant documentary. So that's my number 3, Ginger Baker. My number 2 is back to a jazz drummer. This is Elvin Jones, who here is playing on one of the great albums of all time, A Love Supreme by John Coltrane. And Elvin Jones is just, I don't know, he's the epitome of just a classy, beautiful, intricate, deft, subtle jazz drummer, and his drumming is just really, really gorgeous. And there's a passage on this album where he gets into the most beautiful duet with the pianist McCoy Tyner on here. Absolutely, yeah, beautiful, beautiful stuff. So I've got him as my number 2, Elvin Jones. Leaving my number 1, which is back to a rock drummer, and I've picked John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. He's powerful, he's loud, he's up front, he's fundamental to the Led Zeppelin sound, and for me, I don't know, it's one of the, it drives Led Zeppelin forwards, and it's one of the reasons I just love Zeppelin. I love Moby Dick on this album. I love the drumming in the middle of A Whole Lot of Love. I used to listen to Moby Dick all the time. It was maybe my most played track from this album. And I even love those extended live versions of it where they go on and on forever. But sadly died, as you'd be aware. He was only early 30s, drink problems and all the rest of it. But a great drummer, and contributed greatly to the sound of this brilliant band Led Zeppelin. So I've got him as my number 1, John Bonham. And here we are, my top 10. But as I said at the beginning, if anybody is interested in drumming and drummers and who's best and why they might be best, listen to that guy Andy Edwards. You won't regret it. He's got some brilliant videos. But thanks for listening to mine, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.